Hi, this is Tuvia Polak. I'm in the southern part of Jerusalem here. This road here is called the Hebron Road. If you go about 100 years back and further than that, you have nothing in this area. There's no houses, no buildings, nothing. But this large street that I have behind me right now, the Hebron Road, this road existed. This road was the main road that went from Jerusalem towards Hebron. And this is sort of how Jerusalem has grown. The main roads existed, and a lot of buildings and houses and things like that were built along these main roads that went to places outside of Jerusalem. If I would stand on this exact spot at the time of Jesus, they would say that I'm about halfway between Jerusalem and Bethlehem. Now I'm gonna switch to I'm gonna turn around and switch so you don't have to. So this is a large road. It was paved at the end of the 1800s by the Ottomans, and it goes out from Jaffa Gate. The Jaffa Gate in the old city actually has two roads going out from it. One goes towards the west, towards Jaffa, towards Tel Aviv, and that's why it's called the Jaffa Gate. But it has another road that goes south, which is this one that goes towards Hebron, and that's why the same gate that's called Jaffa Gate in English and in Hebrew is called the Hebron Gate in Arabic, Bab el-Khalil. Now, along this road, if you imagine 100 years back, a bit more than 100 years, we go back to World War I. The Ottomans are ruling and the British are coming. And when the British are coming, I know that reminds Americans of a certain historical epoch, but this is a bit later than that. In World War I, the British arrive, and what you have here is an empty field, and right over there, right behind that building, was the first airfield in Israel, probably in all of the Middle East. The Ottomans built an airfield there for their army in order to fight, because the Air Force was very new and they used it to fight against the British. They failed, the British came, they took over the airfield, and they built a huge military base that went from around over there and on this side of the road, of the Hebron Road, and all the way over there, including this forested area, including everything that's over there. This was called the Allenby Camp, and it was standing here for a long time actually. I hope you can still hear me because there are sirens behind me. Yeah. And this is the military base that the British used from here to go northwards and conquer Jerusalem. They had already conquered Gaza and Beer Sheva when they came here. They built a big military camp here and they conquered Jerusalem. And that camp actually stayed here for a long time throughout the Mandate. It was one of the main camps in Jerusalem. This road up here, if you continue to this for a while, you get to a place which is called the Haas Promenade, which is the southern view over the old city and over Jerusalem. It's a beautiful place, and right over there, just where that view was, the British built the personal residence of the High Commander of the British over Israel, over the Mandate of Palestine. After 1948, what happened was that building became the UN building, and that area became a no man's land, and this area was more or less right along the border. Now, during the British Mandate, another thing that happened was that the Jews built a neighborhood called Talpiot around on this side of the Hebron Road. This was in the 30s, and after a while they started to complain about the airfield noise, and the British moved the airfield from here up to the north. So now the airfield was put next to where Ramallah is. It stopped being used after 48. It was started to be used again after 67 by Israel, but it stopped working in 2000 because of the second Intifada. Right now, what Israel did during the 50s and 60s, this Allenby camp, they used it in order to build barracks and cheap housing for the new immigrants. They had a huge flood of Jewish immigrants coming from the Middle East. They were fleeing the Arab persecution from the entire Arab world, and Israel had to quickly build a lot of small buildings called ma'abarot. There was a huge social problem with it because they were not treated well. It was a lot of problems with it. There was a lot of social upheaval about it in the 60s and 70s. Not much is left from it now, and as you can see, it has even grown over and become sort of like a forest. Now, this specific area where you see the trees, well, it's not going to be here for much longer, and that's why I'm filming it right now, because they recently confirmed that in this area where you see these trees, they're going to build a new American embassy. It's going to be a 10-story high building with a huge underground parking, and those trees and the nature that we see over there is gonna be gone pretty soon. So I'm trying to quickly get a nice shot of it as long as it's still possible. So that's some of the modern history of Israel. You go back to Jesus' time, I would be in this exact spot and people would say you're about midway between Jerusalem and Bethlehem. And really, Jerusalem has grown so exponentially that if it hadn't been for the politics and the West Bank and everything, Jerusalem would probably have swallowed both Ramallah to the north and Bethlehem to the south and turned them into neighborhoods of Jerusalem by now. But of course that doesn't happen. This road is still a main road. It goes down to the south. It eventually turns, it's called Hebron Road still inside Jerusalem. It's called Road 60 when it goes between cities. It goes into the West Bank, passes Bethlehem, goes into to Hebron and continues down south all the way to Beer Sheva. And if you take it to the north, it actually goes north through Ramallah, through Nablus, and all the way up to Nazareth. It was used very heavily during the British Mandate times when those West Bank borders weren't there. Nowadays it's used a bit less, but it's still a very main and very important main road, both for Palestinians and for settlers, and for Israelis within Jerusalem, south of the West Bank and north of the West Bank. So that's a little bit more about the modern history of Jerusalem. This is a main road from Jerusalem to Hebron. Very possible that Jesus or his disciples or people around him have been walking on this very road. This is Tuvia Polak from Jerusalem.